All right. I still see some people coming in, but we'll get started. It's 2 past the hour, and I don't want to drag this on more than I want to respect the people that are already here. Thanks everybody for being here to the officially named Harmony SASE for MSPs, simplifying security, connectivity, and growth, formerly Perimeter 81. Maybe not our punchiest title of an MSP, but I think it will be very interesting for everybody involved. Today, let's start by introducing ourselves. Today, I am Guillaume Boisvert, which is apparently the head of webinars, mostly at Sherweb these days. This webinar is part of a series that is attached to our different product launch that we've had this year and last year. It's going great at Sherweb as far as sort of amplifying our marketplace. And one of the product categories that we wanted to make sure that we address was SASE, so Secure Access Service Edge. Remote access and all that. That's what we're here to talk about. The product that we added is a checkpoint product called Harmony SASE. It's a product that they've acquired that have been in the MSP market for a long time under the name Perimeter 81. With me, I have the head of strategic partner alliances for Checkpoint, Justin Ryle. Thanks for being here, Justin.
Yeah, good to be with you, Guillaume, and thanks to the audience for your time. Really appreciate the participation and looking forward to the webinar today. And also just want to take just a quick moment to thank the broader Sherweb team. It's really exciting to launch with Sherweb and help service the MSP community together. And it's really been great working with you and all the support with the team, right? It takes a village, and there's been a lot of folks involved, and it's been a great process. And yeah, looking forward to the webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, that's very much a shared opinion, very much a collaboration to launch all of these products. Today, just to go through the agenda a little bit, we'll talk about SASE. Like, it's one of those things. If I'm talking about endpoint protection, everybody knows what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about Secure Access Service Edge, there might be a little bit of explanation that is required. Like, what does that mean? How does that, and when we say what does that mean, not generally, like what does it mean for an MSP specifically? What does it mean for you? How is that different than what you're doing now? After that, the focus will be on Checkpoint Harmony SASE specifically. How does it stand out? Like, what are the use cases that it covers, and how is it better than the competition? Then we're going to jump back in and talk about like how you can acquire Harmony SASE at Sherweb. What's the experience like? How do we differentiate ourselves a little bit? And then we'll give you some how to get started. If you have questions and a few other house cleaning items, pardon my English. If you have any question, use the software. There's a Q&A box. Make sure you make use of it. We may answer during the presentation. We may wait to the end and answer there. If you don't get your answer during the webinar, during the presentation, don't worry, we'll contact you directly with a more personal answer to your question. Sometimes the questions are very specific and they're better answered one-on-one, so we might do that, or if we run out of time. I expect to be quite a few questions about SASE. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the webinar is recorded, as it usually is. Anybody that's here or registered will receive a link to the recorded webinar. I believe you also get a link to the presentation. So if you have questions that are more related to what's in the presentation, don't worry about that. You will get access to everything. Well, so enough about all that. Let's get into it. Cybersecurity and SASE, let's talk about it. I guess the first thing, and it may, like, I'm never afraid to look silly because I ask a simple question. I think that's the right place to start when we're talking about SASE. What are we addressing with Secure Access Service Edge? Like, what does that mean? And more specifically, like, how does it relate to the challenges that a managed service provider would have today?
Sure. Yeah, Guillaume, it's a really good question, and one we get quite often. So I think while the audience is looking to maybe the challenges, both sort of structural challenges on the left and the technical challenges on the right that are presented here on the screen, I'll talk a little bit about SASE and so sort of the definition, how it came into being. I think, you know, when we look at the MSP community, and I've been sort of servicing this market for nearly 15 years now across multiple vendors and a little bit of time in distribution, so very familiar. It's really about redefining both the network and cybersecurity, and then sort of merging those together. So when we think about SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which was defined by the Gartner analysts that we all love so much back in 2018, again, that was the networking and cybersecurity sort of convergence story. So when we think about the traditional network, as individuals were behind corporate firewalls with literally butts in seats behind brick and mortar buildings, the firewall worked well, and endpoint security and many of the technologies that managed service providers have built their service around for many years. That has shifted with the advent of SaaS applications, accessing resources that are maybe hosted on the cloud through a VPC. Certainly, and we'll talk about it here in a few slides, but with the advent of remote work and hybrid work that was happening before the COVID issue that we all faced many years ago that we would likely like to forget, that just accelerated it. So this, in terms of SASE, and it's a large concept, but it really is simple, and we've done what I think is a great job of making the technology easy to consume and building that story around securing the network. And the new corporate network, our co-founder and current VP of our rocket inside Checkpoint, Amit Barakat, he said, the internet is the new corporate network, and that's really the reality that we live in today. And that is really what SASE addresses, is this new market. So just on the sort of the items on this slide, without going into each one, there's many use cases. So there's complexity that we see in our networks today around multiple products. Every time there's maybe a new threat or something that is enhanced in the world of the threats that we face every day, there's a new tool that comes out, many tools and shiny objects that are thrown at our partners. And that's obviously not easy for partners to manage. There's too many things for them to focus on the day-to-day. So we want to take the complexity out of that. And that's what SASE solves for. And really a sort of a large strokes, 30,000 foot view of the market. So we're reducing tool sprawl. We're making it easier for partners to develop security and networking. And we're also solving many technical challenges along the way around visibility, managing customers, and then make sure security isn't fragmented as the service is delivered downstream to users.
I know that we'll get into it in just a second, but well, actually, I'm going to let you get into it. One comment that I would make around the need for modernizing network security is it's a conversation that we've had internally, but from our point of view at Sherweb, and I'm biased, I accept it, but I also think we talk to enough partners to understand reality. On a long enough horizon, and that horizon might be very long, but on a long enough horizon, I think most tools will go SaaS, will go software as a service. Like we've seen it already. They're like, I think Microsoft productivity has already switched and everything like that. And I think it went from a few tools are SaaS to the majority of tools are SaaS, and now the niche line of business product is the one that still requires to be like on premise or on a server or something like that. But I think as those get sort of commoditized into software as a service, like we're seeing that shift where, like you said, the internet is your network. Like if it's not an additional component of your network, it is your network, and your users, like, they're not sometimes remote, like they're a remote workforce. And that paradigm really has shifted now, and it seems to be trending more and more in that direction.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we see sort of the full spectrum where we work with partners that are moving away from an on-premise type network and going full software and building zero trust network access. And we'll talk about this a little bit. So literally a firewall that's consumed via software over a cloud gateway, which is very easy to consume. But the story is not one of difficulty, sort of going back to complexity. We're not looking to implement more complexity by a lift and shift, from what may exist today directly to a full SaaS delivered network that applies security. We can take that in bits and bytes, right? So we allow for full mesh connectivity. So if there's individuals that are still in the office, maybe we need to build IPsec tunnels into those or through those firewalls that are there. If those individuals are accessing other resources outside of the office, and there's ways to look at this as a crawl, walk, run as we move from what was previously a hardware centric network into a software centric network. To your point of really what will be the default in the future, and we see that really accelerating. And it's been prevalent in the enterprise for the last 5 years, and there's a little bit of a long tail into the mid-market and SMB, but we're seeing more and more demand for it every day.
One other thing that I think you'll like, but if you haven't planning, then I'm putting you on the spot. But I think some of the use cases that SASE help address is continuing the current philosophy, but in a new world. And I think some of the use cases that it addresses is building for the new world, like it's building it in the new ways. I think it kind of straddles both reality, where we're trying to keep it a little bit similar to what it was with the centralized network and the edges and things like that, the gateway security or the perimeter security, pardon me. And then, but also, I think it also enables like building in that new way, like okay, cloud first, user first, like mobility first, and it really supports that new vision.
That's exactly right, Guillaume. I couldn't say it much better. So when you think about the network, what's important about the network is the identity of the user, who that individual is, what they need to access. So in the prior model, to your point of building for the future, in the prior model, the network was entirely permissive. Once you're on the corporate network, you're typically allowed to access whatever resources that are on the corporate network. Same thing when you're over a corporate VPN if you're remote back into the office. To your point of building for the future, right? We're still working on those same building blocks of building a network. We have firewall and rules for users and ports and accessing over certain protocols and many different ways to create a firewall in the cloud. So those that are familiar with network security this will resonate with. But introducing new concepts like zero trust network access, where that theory of entirely permissive policies go away, and now you're essentially moving forward with a least access privilege type model, right? Where that framework, and people say zero trust is not a product, it's a framework, and that's very true. So we want to say, hey, Guillaume, while you're on the network, that's great. We're gonna check, and we'll talk about this in a little bit when we get more into the product, but we'll make sure that your device is compliant, that you as an individual should be on this network, right, through integration with your IDP. But then once you're actually connecting through the tunnel and you're on the Harmony SASE network, only giving you access to resources that you need to get your job done. So we're introducing new frameworks, new concept, and building really on a deeper security model through the evolution of the network evolving into a software delivered SASE type model.
All right, let's dig into it a little bit. Like, I think the idea here is to put a practical understanding in what it is, because new paradigm of network security centered around the user. Like at the end of the day, if you ask me to connect that to something, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like meaning, like in practice, I don't know what it is. So I think you have a few slides here that are much more about like understanding like what it is, like how like to grasp it a little bit better. So I'll let you go through those.
Yeah, for sure. So I will talk a little bit about here more of a history lesson. I think everybody on the call has lived this, so we'll go through this rather quickly. But it builds the story of why SASE is extremely relevant in today's market. And to build this out, we all know what the past was in terms of VPN connectivity from an office, maybe into a data center over the internet, which was the legacy way of accessing resources. And I want to pause here because that, when we talk about SASE, a lot of times individuals will default to VPN, and this is certainly where we're starting at here, but that's not the full story. It is a piece of the pie. There are so many other pieces of SASE and use cases that we can build on, and I'll show here in a few slides when we talk about Harmony SASE. But this is just the beginning. where we were accessing over VPN, backhauling traffic over maybe a hardware-based VPN and decrypting that traffic. And it was very painful, for those who lived that, right, and maybe live it today, to access those resources over those VPN tunnels. And then the advent of the cloud came, and we advanced in our way that we're building applications and hosting applications and leveraging resources. And SaaS came on, but now this newer advent of cloud was still being accessed many times through a VPN over a gateway that was backhauling traffic, creating a really bad experience for users on that corporate network. And then fast forward a little bit, I mentioned previously that SASE was defined by Gartner in 2018. Shortly thereafter, in 2020, the advent of remote work became really the standard that we were all living in day to day. So you had this massive disruption in the market where overnight organizations went from having a large corporate office or maybe a small office with a handful of individuals in that office. Maybe that was the entire business. Maybe it was a small business. Maybe they had some branch offices. But overnight, those individuals came out of the office. They went to work from their home. They went to work remotely. Maybe they traveled a little bit, and in that time frame as well. And the security very much changed because now we're implementing, VPNs out of the gate and routing all that traffic in really an inappropriate way to address this new paradigm shift of work. And this is really where our business began to take off quite significantly. Was in 2020 and 2021 when folks were looking at a VPN alternative because they were sick of the use case and the headache from their individuals and their users with tickets and the remote access policies that they had in place that were not a good fit for this new shift in paradigm. And these things were obviously very, very, very problematic. So there was a terrible user experience, scalability issues. So how do we get the VPN out to all the users? They're accessing these resources I mentioned before. It's very permissive. So once they're inside and connected through the VPN tunnel, they're accessing really potentially everything on the network. It's very, very slow, not agile whatsoever. So there were massive problems that came with this that created the fabric and sort of the stepping stones for, SASE was already in the market, but let's look at this a little bit closer as an opportunity to think towards the future of how we're building our corporate network and how we're connecting users to resources in an efficient manner and applying security to them as well.
The Sherweb employees that are attending the webinar, the few of them that could attest to the challenges of dealing with VPN. I won't go into more details, but certainly that rings true.
Yeah, absolutely. So the advent of remote work, when SASE really began to proliferate in 2022, we now see private access and internet access. And I'll define internet access here as what many may know as a secure web gateway or a SWG, was all done over the cloud for many SASE providers. But this was a problem in and of itself as well, because there was high costs, right? There was the cost of hosting all that. All the traffic was being routed through those gateways, all the security. So if there was any filtering, any malware protection happening in the SASE product for those individuals was being consumed over the cloud, which is massively expensive for the SASE provider, and they're passing those costs off in most use cases down to the end user through the partner. So very high costs for SASE, violated policy with the decryption of traffic over the gateway and how that sometimes works with SSL as opposed to being local to the user, and where the tunnels terminate and how that all works. Very much an issue, and also slow down traffic. So we went from this issue of remoting in through VPN and the headache around tickets that caused into just another problem with a slow internet connection because everything's being routed through a cloud gateway, and it's not really solving the problem that we're trying to move away from, which is a legacy network. So that kind of segues into why SASE should be considered. And there's many points here, and there's many entry points as well. But this is what we see typically in the market today when partners are engaging with us and when we're in the field, is really around this modern concept around zero trust architecture. So to make sure that we are having deep security in our network and protecting the individuals really from themselves, as well as throwing a cloak over the business through the SASE architecture to create those policies and those access policies in a very granular type fashion. I mentioned before around SaaS applications. So one thing that is a massive benefit to partners is the gateways that we provide are all owned by Checkpoint. The hardware that we deploy, it's all Checkpoint. The IPs are ours. So when that IP is established on the Harmony SASE product and the gateway is set up, those IPs are transferred from Checkpoint ownership to the tenant of that MSP or the customer of that managed service provider. So in many cases, when you're talking about, whether it's application whitelisting for SaaS apps or other areas where you can sort of hide the business and minimize, the footprint, from literally billions of resources and attacks down to just one single IP, there is massive value there for the organization. And we do that in a very efficient way through licensing, which you may talk about a little bit here towards the end, Guillaume, as well as some of these other items here. Again, moving away from a hardware-centric approach, going out to customers, deploying a firewall, configuring that firewall, going through the cycles of renewing that firewall. How do I now leverage that hardware when the office is empty? Why am I having this cost that's potentially a sunk cost for my business? And then again, some of the issues around compliance. I'll jump back up here. We see a lot of partners that are working in certain verticals, whether it's healthcare and they've got to deal with HIPAA, or their business just needs to be compliant with ISO. And there's many frameworks that can help with this as well. But SASE, from the full stack of implementing zero trust, making sure that multi-factor authentication is present before the user connects to the network, making sure that there is a posture policy. So we call it device posture check, which I can talk about in a little bit here, but it's really a policy to say, hey, is this user compliant with certain rules that I've established before they access? So we're building these layers on, in addition to the enhanced encryption that we have and the protocols that we have through the tunnels, to build a very robust security posture for these users that are on the Harmony SASE network. And that's really why it should be considered. Now, there's a lot of use cases for individuals that may start out with looking at it as wanting to just, whitelist their IP through their app providers and sort of decreasing their footprint there. There may be individuals that are interested in looking at the control matrix of maybe they're leveraging CIS and understanding, hey, I've got some gaps here in this framework, and where can SASE, whether it's implementing zero trust or remote access policies, where can we help with that? There's many entry points, and the story sort of evolves depending on, again, the evolution of the business and where you're at with adopting a new approach towards a software-centric network. So this slide is interesting because you see a lot of enterprise logos here, and I would like to first say that those are amazing logos that we've built over the years, both as Perimeter 81 and now as part of the Checkpoint organization, almost a year and a half post acquisition, I should say. But most of our business is actually in the mid-market and SMB space, and a lot of that is, all of it's through the channel. Much of it is through MSPs. When Perimeter 81 was founded, we differentiated ourselves on the ease of use of implementing SASE. So a lot of products in the market today can take weeks, if not months, to configure. Very difficult to build policies. Sometimes it requires expertise that businesses do not have to employ that in the enterprise. And it was just an ugly, clunky user experience. We differentiated ourselves very quickly by creating a user experience that was simple, smooth, and instead of taking weeks and even months to build a network and get all the users enrolled and all the policies built, you can literally deploy a network in 15 minutes and build policies. And within an hour, you can have a fully functioning SASE network with Harmony, which is obviously advantageous for managed service providers that, time is money. Obviously, we understand profitability and want to make it easy and efficient as possible. And I think that'll show up here as I go into a demo a little bit later. But it's where we cut our teeth and where we continue to see success today, even as we build into the enterprise. It's a lot easier to start with an SMB mid-market type approach and then build your product for the enterprise. And then those SMB customers get to have the advantages of the enterprise grade security. It's a lot harder for a lot of these organizations that are in the market that have built for the enterprise to bring that down market to address the mid-market SMB and help MSPs service their customers. Just a quick differentiating factor there around our customer set and how we architected the product. And that comes to the next slide, which is really around the customer experience and what we are looking at. So when we came into Checkpoint in September of 2023, we did some surveys, and the results of those surveys were really interesting. I think it probably goes without saying, solution cost is important, and we can see that towards the bottom. But many security practitioners, many enterprise, many mid-market customers, MSPs, all from the stack all the way from the bottom to the top, are looking for a positive end user experience because it really did not exist in the ecosystem, in the SASE ecosystem across all vendors today. Because again, we talk about that hybrid architecture that we have in place of securing the agent and all of that, and not employing some of the security at the gateway level creates issues, headaches. We differentiate ourselves there around the user experience as well as the richness of security features. Obviously, it's a security product. It needs to be rich. We were robust at time of acquisition, but in a few slides here, I'll talk a little bit about Threat Cloud AI inside of Checkpoint. And excuse me, let's have a pop up. We'll talk about that a little bit, about what that means for you as partners, getting the ability to consume a very rich feature set that continues to evolve and deepen based on 30 plus years of Checkpoint being in the market and all the threat intelligence and the AI engines that we have today. Guillaume, I haven't been able to look at the chat, but I just wanted to pause real quick and maybe you can let me know if there's any questions or anything that have come up thus far. If not, I'll just continue.
We've had a few, but I think I'll keep it to the end. I don't think we've gone to the meat of what the product is, and I'd like to do that before we sidetrack into any other conversation.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. So moving into the product. So we talked before about the evolution. What is SASE? What brought us to where we were today? The access of cloud resources, the advent of moving from VPN to zero trust network access, and what it looks like today. So I'm actually in Las Vegas this week. We're at our global partner conference. It doubles as our sales kickoff. And there's so much conversation here around what we call sort of the full mesh network, or the global mesh network that is now the reality for service providers and security practitioners in the market. Again, sites are distributed, individuals are remote, there's data centers involved. So the fact that a hybrid SASE solution like Harmony SASE is on the market brings a lot of value. And how do we do that? So we create full interconnectivity across our gateways from any resource to any resource. I'll talk a moment about the gateways. We have over 80 gateways that are distributed across the world. So our thought there is, as we build out the network and the ability for partners to choose where they want their network to be is important. We didn't want to go to public cloud and have a sort of an east-west type structure. You can't deny physics. You want to be able to be very close to the gateway. So we allow you to build networks close to where your users are. And in that, once that network is complete, you can have, again, site-to-site connectivity, remote users into the data center, the ability to be more agile with site-to-site VPN. So we see a lot. One use case today would be a lot of times there's difficulties or a bad experience with VoIP connections going from site to site. We help solve that where we have a global private backbone so that can ride our fiber over the SASE network and really clean up those connections and drop the latency and create a better user experience for VoIP products. That's just one very, very small use case around how this global mesh backbone sort of works for partners. There's also interconnectivity between those gateways. So we have a full global backbone. There's high availability that you all can build into the network as you support your customers that may have users in a certain region, and you want to make that highly available. In the rare case that a gateway is down, can fail over and have access and really not interrupt work whatsoever. So it's full mesh, any to any connectivity. And I want to just re-emphasize, I know it's maybe difficult as, again, the concept of SASE is broad. I want to re-emphasize the hybrid architecture that we have. So if we think back a few slides of where the security is employed, it happens at the agent level. So the malware protection, the URL filtering is all happening at the agent, and not all of that is consumed over the gateway. The gateway is simply the tunnel for the VPN connections where the firewall rules are applied, which creates a much richer user experience as opposed to a full cloud-based SASE. And this is a diagram that sort of visualizes that. So I'll just build this out in terms of the any-to-any connectivity. You can see here a managed user, meaning a user with an agent connecting to resources that are maybe on the cloud or in a data center, leveraging the SASE network to do that and secure those connections, or even unmanaged users. And this is a topic I haven't spoken of yet. And again, another use case and another entry point into SASE would be securing and building a network with the ability to bring in contractors. So when we look here at the middle left of the slide and see unmanaged users, we think about even inside potentially a small office of a finance firm, and they have an auditor that needs to come in. Certainly don't want to put an agent on that auditor's personal device or business device and give them access to the network, even if it is least permissive. We want to give them the least amount of access as possible. So we have the ability to actually publish applications that they may need to access through SASE. So those applications can be accessed. Essentially, it's a reverse proxy, and it can access those applications directly through a web browser session, protecting that. So we call that zero trust access. Building out another use case, again, to serve contractors that are coming in and allowing them to connect to resources, even though they may not have a device or an agent on their device, I should say. And then in terms of the product itself and licensing and packages, we've talked a lot about VPN connectivity. We've talked about URL filtering, what happens on the gateway and on the agent. It really boils down to two different products for us. On the left, we have internet access. That is what happens at the agent level. So we can deploy an agent to a device. You can use an MDM, or we can have plenty of ways to get that agent out to the device. And that's where the security is employed. So the URL filtering, malware protection, we have a full malware protection engine on that device as well. DNS security as well. So when you look at this, you see all these pieces where potentially there's individual point solutions in the business. Maybe there's a product that I'm buying today for DNS security only. Maybe I've got a malware protection engine and I need a second opinion, or I'm looking at an alternative for that. All of this is a story of network security, but also consolidation through employing a SASE network.
Sorry for stopping you. the DNS filtering or the DNS security, even like sort of use case, would you be comfortable saying that this can replace sort of a bespoke solution that a partner could be using for DNS security?
Yeah, absolutely. So that could be, you can leverage the gateway and point to our private DNS. We have many different capabilities inside the product to configure DNS security, configure filtering around DNS. So this could be a replacement for, not go into exact competitors, but many of the competitors in the market that we see today. Yes, absolutely. And then on the right, again, building upon this, this is the private access, or what you would think of in terms of ZTNA, remote access, VPN, firewall as a service. All of that happens over our private access product, which is where the gateway is relevant, right? Where the IPs are able to be owned by you and transferred to your tenant and applied, where the firewall rules are set up. All the connectivity in the network happens through the private access product. And I'll be able to show that here as I go into the demo in a little bit as well. So Threat Cloud AI is massively important to our solution, but I don't want to talk just about a solution. I want to keep in mind that this is relevant for your business, and sort of how if I'm thinking of this from a perspective of an MSP. Why is Threat Cloud AI important for SASE and for my business as a whole, right? I mean, we like to talk about our products and our solutions, but what does it really mean at the end of the day? For us, there are many SASE products on the market. There are several that address the SMB and mid-market space, but all of those providers are startups or earlier in the stage of their business, which is great. That's Priority One was there at a point in time. But where Threat Cloud is important to the story is, the product is only as rich as a lot of times the data or the protection behind it. So as we talk about malware protection, as we talk about looking at malicious URLs, malicious websites, DNS protection, all of those topics around security, maybe not thinking about the network, it's really important to have great data. And Check Point has been in business for over 30 years. They've seen billions and billions of threats come through their firewall. There's tens of millions of email inboxes that we protect. There are many cloud gateways that we have deployed in the market. So all of the telemetry that we get off of this robust deployment and millions of endpoints is helping Harmony SASE become a much richer product. So there's sort of the data that we've built over 30 years, and we'll call that the left side of the brain. But then there's the right side of the brain that has over 55 AI engines, where if there's a threat that comes in that may be a 0-day or an unknown, where we have those engines that apply their intelligence to determine what this file is, right? Is it malicious? Is it benign? Is it how should we treat it? And then that is deployed across all of Check Point products. So if that's seen in one of our, and this webinar is not intended to go into the other Check Point portfolio products, but if we see it in a portfolio product on the gateway or the hardware side and the firewall, it enriches our data and vice versa. So it's actually absolutely important conversation, because it goes back to delivering a product that is simple, that is easy to consume in a SASE market that is complex and has products that are hard to consume. So we hit the simplicity button, but we do that while having the best security in the market, which is not something that any other vendor can claim today. And as we look at the talking about other vendors and where we differentiate ourselves, I won't go into each one of these, but we kind of again zero in on the quick deployment of the product, a single console that we have to manage the solution. It's a multi-tenant console. You're not patching SASE together. You're not buying zero trust network access from one vendor and DNS filtering from another and malware protection from a third. You're doing it all through a single vendor SASE, which is really important, which helps drive down costs, less training for your team, high efficacy in the product in terms of our threat prevention capabilities as opposed to the competitors that we see in the market. The speed of the product, again, not to speak just feeds and speeds, but it's important because it translates directly into profitability. If there's a slow product and customers are frustrated and are opening tickets and they're not able to access resources, it's a negative impact at the end of the day, clearly on your business, and that's something that we solve for. And many of these points are points that I have spoken to, previously, but I'll just reiterate some of these around improving your security services and reducing your risk. So delivering an enterprise-grade security solution to customers, helping you with frameworks, helping you deploy a model around zero trust if you're looking at potentially even cyber insurance as something that you need to deliver to your customers, and they require maybe a review of zero trust and how you're doing that. There's many different entry points into this conversation, but it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about reducing risk and creating a better experience for yourselves and for your customers downstream, while lowering the overall total cost of ownership. So we see, again, the software approach moving away from hardware, moving into a consumption-based model that is very aggressively positioned and priced in the market. And at the end of the day, we want to do whatever we can to help you drive your business, build profitability, and secure your customers. And that's what Checkpoint has been amazingly good at for over 30 years. And we're excited to join and sort of build on that momentum with a SASE product that's getting so much traction in the market. Guillaume, any other questions, or should I, Josh? I believe at this point I'm going to switch over into the demo and maybe show the interface just for a few moments.
So, in the interest of time management, I really want to see the demo. Like, to me, that's just a great way to bring everybody back into what we've been saying. So let's take the next 10 minutes on the demo, and then I'll take the last 5 to cover some of the Sherweb stuff. Everybody here, I think, is a Sherweb partner anyway. Like, I don't think we'll have too much trouble finding each other to discuss Harmony SASE. So let's give 10 minutes to that demo to give a practical grasp of all we've been talking about to our attendees.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's a practical grasp. It's hard to drive. It's hard to drive the conversation candidly in 45 minutes, and then you might think, wow, that's really complex, and there's a lot there. And just to maybe look the tiger in the eye or address the elephant in the room, once it's an understanding of what the use case is. So we talk to partners all day, and we'll be working very closely, obviously, with Sherweb, and as they speak to the product, and we all learn and grow together around what the use cases are for your individual business, for your customer, whether that's headache around VPN, or moving away from hardware, or protecting SaaS applications, or I'm looking at a CIS controls framework and I'm having issues on this maybe gap that I need to address that SASE could help with. There's a litany of items we could sort of dovetail into in terms of use cases, but I think the demo will show sort of a good understanding of what those are in a practical manner. So I'll jump in there now.
While you start the demo, I'll just mention that our collaboration with Checkpoint, there you go, is expanding. Like we've introduced Avanon or Harmony SASE, Harmony email and collaboration. So this is sort of as we're expanding into the products that we offer, there's much more that we can look at. I'll let you jump into the demo.
Sure, happy to. All right, and Guillaume, keep me honest on time. I do have a phone next to me, but if I start to go a little bit over, feel free to just interject and cut me off. I'd be happy to. I'm going to leave time for your comments towards the end. Perfect. So this is the dashboard, fully multi-tenant dashboard. So in terms of managing organizations, I will know we also have some API structures available for some items around managing the policies inside the product as well, and we're continually building some of that out. But we've thought about sort of the management of it from the outset. This would give you sort of an overview of the users and individuals, companies that you have on the Harmony SASE network, and you could drive into each one individually or navigate to them over here under your top-level partner tenant that you would have through Sherweb. But I'll go through real quick in terms of what it would look like to get started with the product itself and engaging with it. So the first thing I would do as an individual, as a user and an admin, is create my network. So if I'm licensed for the product, which at this point you would be, this is what I talked about earlier in terms of the 15-minute quick process. I would create my network here. I can choose from one of the over 70 regions. Maybe I've got a user in San Francisco, so I would choose that. And then I would come in, I would make any adjustments. If I wanted to have multiple gateways here for redundancy, I could. And then I would create the network. I'll not obviously take that action here, but once that button is clicked and create the network, that is literally a 10 to 15-minute process. We're spinning up that gateway, transferring that IP to your tenant, building all of that on the back end, and it will be fully ready for you to connect your users to in 15 minutes. After that, as Guillaume talked about from the outset, right, the individual is massively important, because when we talk about SASE, we talk about zero trust. None of that matters if we don't know who the user is. So the first thing we would do after creating the network is to come down here. If I can come into my settings, a little bit of a lag, hotel Wi-Fi, and I would integrate my identity provider. So we integrate with any SAML-based IDP today. So that could be Microsoft Entra, Okta, Ping, you name it. If they're an IDP, we integrate with them. We do have a SAML-based integration with Microsoft as well as Okta, and we're building others as we speak today. So for those who are maybe unfamiliar with what SAML is, that allows you to not only enroll the individual users like you would traditional Active Directory, but it allows you to pull in group structures from that IDP that are already pre-configured, and then you can apply policies to those groups. So it saves you a ton of time in terms of building those groups inside SASE. You already bring the groups into the product. Massive value. That is sort of, again, where we like to start, because the identity of the user is critical to build all the policies around that individual for Harmony SASE. So I'm going to go back over here into a network that's already configured, and we'll just assume that it's done. And come over here. This is sort of a visualization of the gateway. So these tunnels, you can see there's interconnectivity between these gateways. So I have a region here, which would be a gateway in Los Angeles. I have one in New York, London, so forth, so on, right? So if I have an executive in my organization and maybe he sits in LA, works from his home office 4 days out of the week, but then travels to New York maybe a couple times a month, there's interconnectivity across these gateways. And you can see here the backbone and how this looks. So you can access any resource through these tunnels, regardless of which gateway that individual is connecting to. You can see here, if I edit this tunnel, you can create additional subnets and fully configure the connector for that tunnel to that resource that user needs to access. This is also where I know I'm short on time, so I'll speed up here a little bit. This is also where I would add my DNS filtering. So I can come in here and add DNS filtering for domain categories, if I wanted to build exclusion lists and so forth, so on, or if I wanted to set up private DNS, I could do that inside the network here as well. Another thing I want to hit on very quickly is the ability to, if I come over here, we call it device posture check. So this is a conditional access policy, which I think is very important, and I maybe missed highlighting it in the presentation, but it can't be overlooked. A lot of products only focus on device posture or conditional access. This is just part of the solution. So we can add a profile here, and I can say, okay, Guillaume is obviously verified because he's coming through the IDP, but I also want to add a profile to him, and I'll check this every 20 minutes. So even if he's connected to the network, if I do this check and something changes or something is removed, we can go ahead and pull him off the network. So I'll say I want to add a Windows profile, and I want to see if an endpoint security is present and up to date on his device. And I'll check one here, maybe Sentinel-1 or some other. You can stack rules as well. So maybe I want there to be a certificate on that device, or I want to have a specific file that's obscure on that device. If these checks don't happen and that device doesn't exist at one point when Guillaume logs in, or as the check is reoccurring, he'll be pulled off the network. So again, it's talking about a layered security approach, and just having a conditional access policy in place is massively valued for partners as they look towards creating more security for their customers, as well as again, whether it's cyber insurance or compliance for other use cases as well. And then we see here some of the web filter rules that we have in place when we talk about what happens on the agent, building these policies around what the individual can access. We can do bypass rules as well, where we can allow individuals to access anything, maybe that's social media or anything that is banking, and we don't block that, but we want to block maybe adult categories, or we want to block gambling sites. This is very easy and simple to configure, and we can base it on time of day. We can have conditions here. These are all policies that are hierarchical in structure, so you can drag and drop these accordingly to your needs. So much in here, so little time to go over each thing, but then there's all the logging and malware protection that we provide as well. So I would just wrap up with the product is robust, but again, simple to employ. We've got amazing resources through Sherweb and through our team to show the product and to speak through use cases. So make sure you leverage them, and we can talk through this a little bit more potentially in the future.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to let the people leave the people wanting more. So there's more to the product than what was shown. But I think it's already so I'll put it as a question to people that are here. Where's your portal now today? Like, if you want to check, because you have to have those things. Like, there's no choice. Like, this isn't a new security you should put on. It's security you should have already. So where is your portal to manage like DNS filtering, network connection, remote access, like endpoint security? Like, which portal do you go in to do those things? And I'm going to be presumptuous and say there's probably you're going to have to name like 5 or 6 different portals to manage that stuff. I think SASE, the main thing that I've gathered from SASE, because I wasn't an expert like a year or two ago, or I'm still not. But the thing that I gather is mostly that it's a collection of now, because of the new reality, new paradigms of how things are done, those tools now all make sense together. Like they're now being brought into a logical position in the stack and how you manage them. So the idea here is very simple: is you'll need to do all those things. There's a specific focus around it, like remote access and the identity management. Why not have it as part of a single tool that's cohesive? If you want to switch to the presentation, I'll touch quickly on a few items around the Harmony SASE at Sherweb. So Absolutely. One thing, without going into very detailed pricing and everything, because it varies per customer, region, whatever, if you're in Canada, US, and whatnot. But I will say that if you looked in the past at a SASE solution, or even specifically at Perimeter 81, I think now is a good time to have a second look. There's some new pricing, there's some new offers. Come and see us and let's talk about it. You could be surprised at how much the price can make sense, how it can make sense for the use cases that it covers. The pricing has become very, very, I'm going to call it logical. It makes sense to me, that pricing. We've been trained. Sherweb now knows the product, can give demos, can give you access. We can present it to you. If we feel we're not as good as we need to be, then we'll bring in the people from Checkpoint to help us, and you'll get a seamless experience where we have access to the best and brightest. It is a fully automated product when it comes to provisioning and billing. Basically, the experience is very, very, very straightforward. You come to Sherweb to our portal Cumulus, you activate Checkpoint Harmony SASE, and then you do whatever you want in the product. You provision your clients, provision products, assign licenses, and everything gets reflected back into Cumulus as usage, and you get billed for it. It is a per month per user billing. Very simple, very straightforward. There's a few other things, but don't really have time to get into everything. But like there's a total of 3 SKUs really. So even if we try, we can't make it that complicated. I'm going to touch on the free trial and the NFR. So you have the ability to provision the product for your own organization. You have the ability to do demos and things like that through trials with your clients. And I already touched on the provisioning process with our vendor management. So all those things kind of put together makes it a very, very interesting proposition to get into SASE if you haven't, or specifically to get into Checkpoint Harmony SASE with us. I think it's one of those products. Like if I talk to you about endpoint security, it's endpoint security. Like I think you're at least as good of an expert as I am about it, and everybody kind of knows what we're talking about. When it comes to Harmony SASE, I think there's value in sitting down and having a conversation, looking at your use cases and how it can fulfill them, what kind of time saving you're going to get from it, like which feature is it enabling that you don't currently have, things like that. I'll take the minute that's left to try to answer at least one of the questions we asked, because we had quite a few. But you talked about, now I'll give you that one, Justin. Like you talked about network performance in your presentation, like as a key thing. I guess the question comes from that: what's the real impact of latency if I'm using SASE, like as opposed to being on a VPN? Like why did you sort of highlight the quality of the network of Checkpoint?
Yeah, so we talk about, I mean, there's certainly variables, right, in terms of the internet connection and many other things, but we say we're nearly 4x faster, and that is because, again, that traffic is, you know, going through a tunnel that is very close to the users, depending on where that gateway is deployed and where the concentric usage is of the business. So very efficient. The routing is efficient, and it creates a lot of savings in terms of the latency that is typically experienced through a traditional VPN.
That's interesting, and I think it'd be worth discussing a little bit more. But I want to touch on that last question, and then we'll release everybody. Do you provide templates or written guidance on using SASE to achieve some compliance? Like in the case of the question that they're talking about ISO 27001. I think the same question would apply like CMMC, NIST, and things like that. Like do you have documented insight into how Harmony SASE relates to the goal of the MSP of accomplishing those compliance?
Yeah, so a few things there, just real quick. So first, our business is adhering to many of those same security compliance policies, obviously, especially ISO 27001. When you look at data security, encryption, and many of the necessary needs on those security controls that Harmony SASE will help with. We do have ways through some documentation, through our team that can help support that, both here in the States and in Israel, to help through showing the value and where you can leverage the product to build your compliance story as you're looking to get those completed. Absolutely.
Okay, we're out of time. I want to respect everybody's schedule. I want to thank everybody for being here. If you have questions or comments, I think there's maybe another slide after this one with some of the contacts. Usually there is, maybe not.
That's it.
Nope. Oh, so mistake on my part. Contact your account representative. If you don't have an account representative, contact anybody in sales. So sales@sherweb.com or partners@sherweb.com. If you're lost, not sure who to talk to, you can contact me directly. Reach out on LinkedIn. Like anything will work, and we'll get you to the right people. The product is available now. It's been available for a few weeks now. It's been a great success, a lot of demand, a lot of interest in the product. So I think you owe it to your customers to figure out what you want to do with cloud, what I would call very much cloud security, network security. Let's talk about it. So thanks again, Justin, for being here. Super interesting. Happy that you were here to enlighten us. And we'll see you when we launch the next product, which I'll give you a teaser, will be fairly soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks, audience. Bye-bye.